If you leave me, I'll make sure everyone sees what a slut you really are. Those were the last words Nathan Rivera said to me before I walked out of his apartment for the final time. My name is Maya Patel. I'm 28 years old, and I work as a cybersecurity analyst for a major tech firm in San Francisco. At that moment, standing in his doorway with my overnight bag in hand, I knew I was making the right decision. What I didn't know was that Nathan would actually follow through on his disgusting threat, or that it would take 2 years for karma to catch up with him in the most spectacular way possible. I didn't respond to his threat that night. I simply looked at him calmly, nodded once, and said, "Take care of yourself, Nathan." Then I closed the door and walked away from what had been a toxic 18-month relationship. I should have seen the red flags earlier, but when you're in love, or what you think is love, you tend to overlook things that seem obvious in hindsight. The first sign something was wrong came 3 days later. My phone started buzzing incessantly at 7:23 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Text after text from friends, colleagues, even my cousin in Portland. All variations of the same horrifying message. "Maya, have you seen what's online?" My stomach dropped as I opened the first link my best friend Sarah had sent me. There they were. Private, intimate photos I had shared with Nathan during our relationship, now posted on multiple revenge porn websites with my full name, my workplace, and even my LinkedIn profile attached. The captions were vile, describing me in degrading terms that made my skin crawl. Below the images were dozens of comments from strangers making crude jokes and threats. I felt violated in a way I couldn't even begin to process. But here's the thing about working in cybersecurity. You learn to think systematically under pressure. While part of me wanted to curl up and hide, the analytical part of my brain immediately kicked into gear. I took screenshots of everything. The websites, the URLs, the timestamps, the comments. I documented which platforms were hosting the content and began the tedious process of filing takedown requests. Most importantly, I started building a case. Let me back up and explain how Nathan and I met, because understanding his character is crucial to this story. We connected through a mutual friend at a house party in January 2019. Nathan was charming, funny, and worked as a marketing coordinator for a startup downtown. He seemed different from the tech bros I usually dated, more artistic, more emotionally available. For the first few months, he was everything I thought I wanted. The problems started small. Nathan would get jealous when I worked late or traveled for conferences. He'd make snide comments about my salary being higher than his, disguised as jokes but with an edge that cut deep. He had this way of making me feel guilty for my success, like I was somehow showing him up just by doing my job well. When I got promoted to senior analyst after 15 months of dating, his congratulations felt hollow and forced. The relationship deteriorated rapidly after that. Nathan became increasingly controlling and manipulative. He'd pick fights about my clothes, my friends, my career ambitions. The final straw came when he demanded I share my location with him at all times for safety, and suggested I turn down a prestigious project that would involve travel to New York. That's when I realized I was in an emotionally abusive relationship and needed to get out. After discovering the revenge porn, I immediately contacted the San Francisco Police Department's cybercrime unit. Officer Jennifer Kim was assigned to my case, and she was both professional and compassionate as she walked me through the process. In California, revenge porn is a misdemeanor that can be elevated to a felony under certain circumstances, particularly when there's intent to cause substantial emotional distress, or when it impacts the victim's professional life. The challenge, Officer Kim explained, is proving who actually posted the content. These sites often allow anonymous uploads, and perpetrators use VPNs and fake accounts to cover their tracks. This is where my professional expertise became invaluable. I spent the next several weeks conducting my own digital forensics investigation, tracing IP addresses, analyzing metadata, and creating a comprehensive report that clearly linked the uploads back to Nathan's devices and accounts. The evidence was damning. Nathan had been sloppy in his rage, using his home internet connection for some of the uploads and his work computer for others. He'd even used variations of usernames that connected to his other social media profiles. I compiled everything into a detailed report with timestamps, technical analysis, and clear chain of custody documentation. The police were impressed with the thoroughness of my investigation. Meanwhile, I was also fighting the psychological impact of the violation. The photos had been viewed thousands of times before most were taken down. I had to explain the situation to my manager at work. Fortunately, she was understanding and supportive. I started therapy to deal with the trauma of having my privacy destroyed and my body commodified for strangers' consumption. Nathan, meanwhile, seemed to think he'd gotten away with it. Through mutual friends, I learned he was dating someone new within a month of our breakup, a 22-year-old photography student named Olivia Chen. I felt sorry for her, knowing she had no idea what kind of person she was involved with. I briefly considered reaching out to warn her, but my therapist advised against it, and legally, it could have complicated my case. The legal process moved slowly. The district attorney's office filed charges against Nathan in August 2019, 2 felony counts of cyber exploitation and 1 misdemeanor count of harassment. Nathan hired an expensive lawyer who tried every trick in the book to get the charges dropped or reduced. They claimed the photos were shared consensually, that I was trying to ruin Nathan's life out of spite, that the evidence was circumstantial. None of it stuck, thanks to my meticulous documentation. Nathan's lawyer managed to drag the case out for months with continuances and motions. As 2020 arrived, I was frustrated with the pace, but determined to see it through. That's when I learned through the grapevine that Nathan was planning to propose to Olivia. The news hit me like a punch to the gut, not because I still had feelings for him, but because I imagined this poor young woman having no idea she was about to tie herself to someone capable of such cruelty. Then came the pandemic, and everything slowed down even more. Court dates were postponed indefinitely. Nathan and Olivia moved in together during lockdown, and by Christmas 2020, they were engaged. Watched their relationship progress through social media posts that painted Nathan as a devoted romantic partner. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. During this time, I focused on rebuilding my life and career. The initial trauma of the revenge porn had given way to a steely determination to see justice served. I was promoted again at work, this time to lead cybersecurity analyst with a substantial raise. I started dating someone new, Kevin Martinez, a software engineer who was nothing like Nathan. Kevin was secure, supportive, and never once made me feel like I needed to diminish myself for his comfort. In May 2021, Nathan's case finally went to trial. I testified for 3 hours, walking the jury through the technical evidence and the emotional impact of his crime. Nathan's defense continued to paint me as a vindictive ex-girlfriend seeking revenge, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty. Verdicts on all counts. Nathan was sentenced to 3 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 18 months. The judge was particularly harsh in her comments, noting that revenge porn represents a particularly insidious form of domestic abuse that can have lasting impacts on victims' lives and careers. Nathan's face was ashen as the bailiff led him away in handcuffs. He looked back at me once, and I met his gaze with the same calm expression I'd worn the night I left his apartment. But the story doesn't end there. Due to overcrowding and good behavior, Nathan was released after serving only 14 months. I learned about his release through the victim notification system in July 2022. By that time, he and Olivia had apparently worked through whatever strain his incarceration had caused their relationship. In fact, they were planning to get married in October. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Remember Officer Kim from the cybercrime unit? She had become something of a mentor and friend over the course of my case. We stayed in touch, and she occasionally sent me updates about other revenge porn cases and legislative developments. In September 2022, she called me with interesting news. "Maya, I thought you should know," Officer Kim said. "We've received reports that Nathan Rivera is back to his old tricks. Different victim, same pattern. The new case is still being investigated, but the evidence looks solid." My blood ran cold. Despite everything, The arrest, the trial, the prison sentence, Nathan had apparently learned nothing. He was victimizing someone else. The new victim was a 19-year-old college student named Emma Thompson. Nathan had met her through a dating app and had a brief relationship with her while he was supposedly committed to Olivia. When Emma broke things off, Nathan retaliated by posting intimate photos of her online, just as he had with me. The pattern was identical, right down to the threatening text message he sent before the photos went live. Officer Kim explained that they had been building the new case quietly, waiting for the right moment to make an arrest. The timing was particularly sensitive because they wanted to ensure Nathan didn't flee or destroy evidence. "We're planning to arrest him on his wedding day," she told me. "He'll never expect it, and we'll have him in a location where he can't run." The wedding was scheduled for Saturday, October 15th, 2022, at the Fairmont San Francisco Hotel. It was going to be an elegant affair with over 200 guests. Nathan had apparently spared no expense, perhaps trying to project an image of respectability after his criminal conviction. Officer Kim asked if I wanted to be present for the arrest, not as a participant but as a witness to justice being served. I struggled with the decision. Part of me wanted to stay far away from Nathan and anything connected to him. I had moved on with my life and was genuinely happy. Kevin and I were talking about moving in together. My career was thriving, and I had processed most of the trauma through therapy. Did I really need to see Nathan arrested at his own wedding? But then I thought about Emma Thompson, just 19 years old and dealing with the same violation I had experienced. I thought about Olivia Chen, who was about to marry a man who had cheated on her and victimized another woman while they were engaged. I thought about all the other potential victims Nathan might claim if he wasn't stopped permanently. So, I said yes. The morning of October 15th was crisp and clear, perfect wedding weather. I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit, professional, respectful, but powerful. Kevin offered to come with me for moral support, but I declined. This was something I needed to do alone, to close this chapter of my life definitively. The wedding ceremony was scheduled to begin at 3 p.m. in the Hotel's elegant ballroom. Officer Kim and her team were positioned strategically throughout the hotel, waiting for the optimal moment to make the arrest. The plan was to wait until after the ceremony, but before the reception, when Nathan would be briefly alone changing clothes. I watched from the back of the ballroom as Nathan stood at the altar in his expensive tuxedo, looking every inch the respectable groom. Olivia walked down the aisle in a stunning dress, her face radiant with joy. She had no idea that her fiancé was about to be arrested for victimizing yet another woman during their engagement. The ceremony proceeded normally until the officiant reached the familiar words, "If anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace." The ballroom fell silent, as it always does during this moment. That's when Officer Kim and two other officers entered through the side door. "Nathan Rivera," Officer Kim called out in a clear, strong voice that carried throughout the ballroom. "You're under arrest for violation of California Penal Code Section 647J, distributing intimate images without consent." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs as Nathan's face went white. "There must be some mistake," Nathan stammered, but Officer Kim was already moving toward the altar. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The officers flanked Nathan as Officer Kim continued, reading his Miranda rights. Olivia stood frozen in her wedding dress, bouquet still in hand, as she watched her groom being handcuffed at the altar. "Nathan, what is this?" she cried out. "What are they talking about?" But Nathan couldn't meet her eyes. He knew exactly what this was about, and from his expression, he knew his game was finally over. As the officers began to escort Nathan out of the ballroom, Olivia's maid of honor approached her with a phone. "Olivia, honey, you need to see this," she said gently. On the screen were printouts of the evidence against Nathan, the photos he had posted of Emma Thompson, the threatening messages, the timeline showing he had been cheating throughout their engagement. Olivia's bouquet hit the floor first, followed by a sound I'll never forget. A wail of pure anguish as she realized her entire relationship had been built on lies. She gathered up her dress and ran from the ballroom, leaving 200 confused wedding guests and one very satisfied ex-girlfriend. Nathan was led past me on his way out in handcuffs. For just a moment, our eyes met, and I saw something I had never seen in him before. Complete defeat. The arrogant, manipulative man who had tried to destroy my life was finally facing consequences he couldn't charm or lawyer his way out of. "You did this," he hissed at me as the officers paused near the door. "You ruined everything." I looked at him with the same calm expression I had perfected over 3 years of dealing with his chaos. "No, Nathan," I replied quietly. "You did this to yourself. You had every opportunity to learn from your mistakes and become a better person. Instead, you chose to hurt another innocent woman. This is exactly what you deserve." Officer Kim gave me a small nod as they escorted Nathan out. The investigation had revealed that Nathan had also been stealing money from his startup employer to pay for the wedding and had been lying to Olivia about his criminal record. He was now facing multiple felony charges that would likely result in a much longer prison sentence. In the aftermath, I learned more about how the case had developed. Emma Thompson had been incredibly brave in coming forward, despite being even younger than I was when Nathan victimized me. She had done her research and found articles about my case, which gave her the courage to file her own police report. Through victim services, we were eventually introduced and became advocates for stronger revenge porn legislation in California. Nathan pleaded guilty to avoid trial and was sentenced to 6 years in state prison with no possibility of early release. He was also required to pay restitution to both Emma and me and to register as a cyber offender, which would limit his internet access and employment opportunities for the rest of his life. His startup fired him immediately after the arrest, and he faced additional criminal charges for embezzlement. Olivia Chen, meanwhile, showed remarkable strength in the aftermath of her wedding day disaster. She filed for an annulment, got into therapy, and eventually started a support group for women who had been deceived by partners hiding criminal records. She reached out to me months later to say that while the experience was devastating, she was grateful to have learned the truth before legally binding herself to Nathan. As for me, the experience gave me a sense of closure I hadn't expected. Seeing Nathan finally face meaningful consequences for his actions allowed me to put that chapter of my life completely behind me. Kevin and I did move in together and eventually got engaged ourselves, a proposal that happened in private, with love and respect, the complete opposite of the toxic relationship I had escaped. I also became an advocate for revenge porn victims, speaking at conferences about the intersection of technology and domestic abuse. My professional expertise in cybersecurity, combined with my personal experience as a victim, has made me a sought-after consultant for law enforcement agencies developing digital evidence protocols. The irony isn't lost on me that Nathan's attempt to destroy my life ultimately led to new opportunities and a deeper sense of purpose. While I would never wish the experience on anyone, it taught me about my own resilience and the importance of fighting for justice, not just for myself, but for other victims who might not have the resources or expertise I possessed. Emma Thompson and I still stay in touch. She went on to graduate summa cum laude and is now in law school, specializing in technology and privacy law. She wants to be a prosecutor focused on cyber crimes, inspired by her own experience and the importance of holding perpetrators accountable. The wedding venue refunded Olivia's deposit and donated the cost of the catering to a domestic violence organization. The vendors involved, photographer, florist, band, all heard the story and rallied around Olivia with support during her recovery. Sometimes people surprise you with their capacity for kindness. Looking back now, nearly 2 years after Nathan's arrest at his own wedding, I can honestly say that justice was served in the most poetic way possible. He tried to destroy my reputation and career out of spite, and instead, he ended up destroying his own future. He could have served his original sentence, learned from his mistakes, and built an honest life with Olivia. Instead, his inability to change his behavior led to his complete downfall. The last I heard, Nathan was still in prison and would be for several more years. He lost his fiancée, his job, his freedom, and his future prospects. He'll have to register as a cyber offender and will struggle to find employment or housing when he's eventually released. Meanwhile, Emma and I have both gone on to successful, fulfilling lives. There's a lesson in all of this about the nature of consequences and karma. Nathan thought he could act without accountability, that his charming exterior would protect him from the results of his cruelty. He was wrong. Sometimes the universe needs a little help delivering justice, but it always finds a way. For anyone reading this who has experienced revenge porn or similar digital abuse, please know that you have options. Document everything, report to authorities, and don't be afraid to use whatever skills and resources you have to fight back. The system isn't perfect, but there are people who will help you, and there are ways to hold perpetrators accountable. And for anyone considering using intimate images as a weapon against an ex-partner, remember Nathan Rivera. Remember that your moment of vindictive satisfaction could cost you everything: your freedom, your reputation, your future. The person you're trying to hurt might be stronger than you think, and justice has a way of finding those who prey on others. As I write this from my new apartment with Kevin, our dog sleeping at my feet, and wedding planning magazines scattered on the coffee table, I'm grateful for how everything turned out. Nathan Rivera tried to make me a victim, but instead, he made me a survivor, an advocate, and ultimately, a stronger person than I ever thought I could be. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's living well and making sure other people don't suffer the same harm you did. Sometimes that means showing up to watch your abuser get arrested at his own wedding. And sometimes it means fighting to change laws and systems so the next victim has better tools for justice. Either way, it beats hiding in shame or letting fear control your life. Nathan Rivera learned that lesson too late. But for the rest of us, it's never too late to choose justice over revenge, growth over resentment, and healing over hatred. Karma might be slow, but she's thorough. And sometimes she has a sense of timing that would make even the best scriptwriter jealous.